Reflection about the x-axis. It says the graph of y is equal to negative times f of x is the graph of y is equal to f of x reflected about the x-axis. Meaning, I take this graph here and it's going to flip over the x-axis. This is our x-axis here. This is what it means by reflect about the x-axis. Okay. Um, so it says here, draw the graph of f and reflect the graph of f about the x-axis, meaning it changes in the equation y is equal to f of x is multiplied by -1. So let me explain what this means here. Um, so here's our original graph. This is our f of x is equal to the absolute value of x. Here's the table, and I won't um, identify every last part of the graph, but some of it. We have -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and then we have 2, 1, 0, 1, 2. So these are the points, and I'm going to highlight those. These are the points that's on the line that I've identified. Okay, you can do 4, 4, 5, 5. It's a but we'll just stick with these smaller numbers. Okay, so it says here, use the graph of f of x is equal to the absolute value of x, that's what we have, to obtain the graph of g of x is equal to negative times the absolute value of x. Okay, so what this means is that whenever there's a negative in front, when there's a negative in front of your grouping symbol, as a negative that's shown here, you, the equate or the graph is going to reflect about the x-axis. That's when it's in front of the grouping symbol. So how would we know? So when we say reflect, well, we want, if I have a mirror here and or I fold at the x-axis, we want some points to touch. Okay, so how to find that ordered pair? How to determine, okay, and my y shouldn't be so long here, but this is our g of x is equal to the absolute value of x. Okay, um, what we're going to do is multiply to determine if it how to reflect about the x-axis. To find those points, we're going to multiply the, excuse me, multiply the y coordinate by -1. We're going to multiply the y coordinate by -1. So what this means is you see our table here, and our x column stays the same. So to find out how it reflects, we're going to take from the original graph, we're going to multiply each coordinate of y by -1. So then 2 times -1 for this y coordinate, this is going to be -2. Then times -1. So -1, we have 0. This gives us -1. This gives us -2. Okay. So when we plot, those points should be, it should be across the x-axis. So here we have -2, -2, -1, -1, 0, 0. We have 1, -1, and we have 2, -2. So take a look. And this is how, when there is a negative in front of the grouping symbol, our grouping symbol is going to reflect about the x-axis. Okay. Now, let me adjust my screen here, my camera, because I want you to see the entire paper for the most part. Okay. Now, let's look at reflect about the y-axis. The y-axis, the vertical line. Okay. So, let's look at what's noted at the bottom of your page. All right, so reflection about the y-axis. The graph of y equals to f of negative x is the graph of y equals to f of x reflected about the y-axis. So, changes in the equation of y equals to f of x is replaced with negative x. So let me explain what this is talking about here. Use the graph of f of x is equal to the absolute value of x to obtain the graph of h of x is equal to the absolute value of negative x. So I'm going to write this in blue. We have h of x is equal to the absolute value of negative times x. Okay, so when the negative sign is inside the grouping symbol, you're going to reflect about the y-axis. So these are going to flip-flop. They're going to switch. You're going to reflect, meaning it's going to, what was on the right-hand side is on the left-hand side. The points on the left-hand side is going to be on the right-hand side. And what you would do, given your table, we have our table here, and we create an XY table. Well, from our original graph, what's going to take place is that whereas before when you reflected about the x-axis you multiplied the y coordinates by -1, well this time you're going to multiply the x coordinates by -1. Multiply the x coordinates by -1. So go to your original graph and look at the x coordinates and multiply those by -1. So you're going to have 2, 1. We have 0 as we multiply by -1. Then this becomes -1. This becomes -2. Okay? So this time it's going to be the opposite. So whenever we plot those points, it's going to be, for this example, it's going to be the original function, the original graph. So we have 2, 2, but see how it reflected about on the opposite on the y-axis, where here we had -2, 2. When you reflect about the um, y-axis, it's going to be 2, +2. Where here we had -1, 1, we reflect about the y-axis, we go over to 1, +1, 0, 0 stays. And then when we reflect about 1, 1, it's -1, 1. When we have 2, 2, its reflection about the y-axis is going to be -2, 2. So reflect about the y-axis for this example is the same graph. But I do want you to remember these rules here. What do you multiply given? If I gave you an XY table, how would it reflect? Will it multiply? Will we divide? Will we have to add or subtract? So we definitely would do more of these in the classroom, um, of the translating and how to read that equation without even having to graph it at that moment.